The last photograph of Julian Hayes showed him smiling, holding up his glass in a toast at the press club dinner. 3 days later, his car veered off Starrow Drive into the Charles River. Accident, they said. Arden McKinley knew better. If you're looking for a story that won't get you killed, I suggest covering the mayor's garden party, Editor-in-Chief Margaret Phillips said, dropping a folder onto Arden's desk. The Hayes investigation is closed. Arden didn't look up from Julian's notes spread across her desk. His brakes were tampered with. The police report. The police report says accident. Margaret lowered her voice. Blackwood Industries has friends in every corner of this city. Drop it, McKinley. Julian was my mentor. He taught me everything I know. And if you had learned from him properly, you'd recognize when you're outmatched. Margaret's expression softened momentarily. He was investigating something big at Blackwood before he died. And now he's gone. Arden waited until Margaret retreated to her office before pulling out the USB drive Julian had mailed to her the day before his death. His final message played in her mind. If anything happens to me, finish what I started. 3 months of investigation had yielded little. Thaddeus Blackwood, once the darling of the tech world, had withdrawn from public life a decade ago. His company continued innovating, but the man himself had become a ghost, sparking wild rumors about his fate. Some said illness, others claimed he'd been disfigured in a lab accident. The truth remained elusive. Until now. Ms. Winters? They're ready for you. The receptionist at Blackwood Industries gestured toward a glass-walled conference room. Arden smoothed the freshly printed resume on her lap. Eliza Winters, Yale graduate, 3 years at Google, impeccable references, all fabricated masterfully by a contact who owed her a favor. The position for Blackwood's personal assistant had appeared suddenly, an opportunity too perfect to ignore. Howard Reeves, head of HR, spent 40 minutes testing her knowledge of advanced scheduling software and discussing the demanding nature of the position. Mr. Blackwood values privacy above all else, he explained. The position requires living on-site at his estate. Days off are scheduled monthly. Phone usage is restricted to designated areas. Still interested? Absolutely. Arden maintained her practiced smile. There's one more thing. Reeves slid a non-disclosure agreement across the table. This isn't standard. Break it, and the company will pursue legal action beyond what you can imagine. Arden signed without hesitation. 2 days later, she passed through the imposing gates of Blackwood Estate, suitcases in hand. The winding driveway led to a modernist mansion of glass and stone perched on a cliff overlooking Massachusetts Bay. Solar panels gleamed on every surface, catching the afternoon sunlight. A stern-faced housekeeper named Mrs. Chun greeted her at the door. Mr. Blackwood maintains a strict schedule. You'll shadow me today and tomorrow, then assume full duties. Your quarters are in the East Wing. When will I meet Mr. Blackwood? Arden asked, following Mrs. Chun through a minimalist foyer. When he wishes to meet you. The housekeeper's tone permitted no further questions. Arden's room was surprisingly comfortable, a studio apartment with modern furnishings and a view of the ocean. A tablet on the desk displayed a detailed schedule, security protocols, and dietary requirements for her employer. That evening, after memorizing the mansion's layout, Arden unpacked the single item that might betray her, a small photograph of herself with Julian, hidden inside a compact mirror. She touched his face briefly before securing it in a hidden pocket of her suitcase. I'll find out what happened to you, she whispered. 3 days passed before Thaddeus Blackwood acknowledged her existence. Arden was reviewing supply orders when the intercom on her desk buzzed. Ms. Winters. My office. Now. The voice was deep, commanding, yet oddly strained. Mrs. Chun appeared instantly. Follow me. They ascended to the 3rd floor, where Mrs. Chun pressed her palm to a biometric scanner. Heavy doors slid open to reveal a sprawling laboratory office hybrid. Scientific equipment lined the walls, multiple screens displayed complex equations, and at the center, a man stood with his back to the door, gazing out a wall of windows at the turbulent sea below. You may go, Mrs. Chun, he said without turning. When the doors closed, he finally faced Arden. Thaddeus Blackwood bore little resemblance to the charismatic young genius who once graced magazine covers. His face was gaunt, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his once black hair was streaked with gray despite being only 42. Yet his piercing blue eyes remained unchanged, intelligent, assessing, and utterly cold. Your references are falsified, he stated flatly. Arden's carefully prepared explanation died on her lips. The question is, he continued, stepping closer, who sent you? Corporate espionage is the obvious answer, but you lack the technical background. Government, perhaps? Or media? I don't know what you're talking about. Arden managed, heart pounding. My credentials are legitimate. Lying wastes my time, and I have precious little to spare. He circled her slowly. Yale has no record of Eliza Winters. The phone numbers for your references route to voice mailboxes created last month. Your identity is a facade. Mr. Blackwood, I allowed you access to test my security protocols. They failed. You succeeded. Congratulations. His voice carried no warmth. You have 30 minutes to leave the premises before I call authorities. A tremor shook his hand, so subtle Arden almost missed it. Then his face contorted in pain. Mr. Blackwood? Arden stepped forward instinctively. He staggered, clutching the edge of his desk. His breathing became labored, face ashen. Get out, he gasped, fumbling for something in his desk drawer. Instead, Arden rushed to his side. What do you need? Medication. His legs buckled. As Arden caught him, preventing his head from hitting the floor, she noticed the veins at his temples pulsing with an unnatural blue light. Left drawer, he whispered. Injector. Arden retrieved a device resembling an EpiPen and pressed it against his neck as instructed. The effect was immediate. The strange blue glow subsided, and his breathing steadied. She helped him to a nearby couch, her journalist's mind racing with questions even as her human instincts responded to his distress. Why are you helping me? He asked weakly, studying her face. Arden met his gaze unflinchingly, standing at a crossroads of truth and deception. I don't know, she answered honestly. And that was the first genuine mystery of many to come. Arden expected to be escorted off the property after Thaddeus Blackwood's collapse. Instead, she found herself being issued a higher security clearance the following morning. Your intervention yesterday was fortuitous, Blackwood said, not looking up from his workstation when she entered his laboratory. A wall of monitors displayed data she couldn't comprehend. Mrs. Chin typically assists during my episodes, but she was off premises. What exactly happened to you? Arden asked, maintaining her cover as Eliza while mentally documenting every detail. A medical condition. Nothing that concerns you. He finally turned to face her. You still haven't explained your false credentials. Arden had prepared for this moment all night. I needed this job. Your company rejects candidates without Ivy League backgrounds or tech giants on their resumes. So I created what you wanted to see. A convenient explanation, but a true one. Partial truths made the best lies. I've spent years in administrative roles for executives less demanding than you. I'm qualified. The pedigree was just window dressing. Blackwood studied her for an uncomfortable moment. Desperation makes people dangerous, Ms. Winters. Remember that I'm watching you. He assigned her a punishing schedule, organizing his research documents, managing correspondence with the Blackwood Industries Board, and coordinating with his medical team. The work would have overwhelmed most assistants, but Arden recognized it as a test. The mansion revealed itself to be a technological marvel. Solar glass harvested energy. The air filtration system could sustain life for months if sealed off. Security measures rivaled government facilities. Yet despite its grandeur, only 5 people occupied the sprawling estate. Blackwood, Mrs. Chun, the groundskeeper, the security chief, and now Arden. On her 4th night, unable to sleep, Arden slipped from her room to explore. The East Wing's dimmed hallways led to a gallery of Blackwood's achievements, photographs, patents, and press clippings chronicling his rise as a brilliant physicist who revolutionized energy storage technology before his 30th birthday. A portrait at the gallery's end showed Thaddeus with another man who shared his features, presumably his brother, killed in the lab accident that drove Blackwood into seclusion. Beside it hung a photo of Blackwood with a striking woman whose smile didn't reach her eyes. Veronica Sinclair, came a voice behind her. Mrs. Chin stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Former co-founder of Blackwood Industries. What happened to her? Arden asked, hiding her surprise at the housekeeper's sudden appearance. She left after the accident, claimed irreconcilable differences. Mrs. Chun studied Arden carefully. Insomnia, Ms. Winters? Just familiarizing myself with the house. At 2 a.m.? In restricted areas? I didn't see any restricted area signs. The absence of permission is not permission, Ms. Winters. Mrs. Chin's tone softened slightly. He wasn't always like this, you know. Brilliant, yes, but once he laughed. Once he lived. Before Arden could respond, an alarm blared throughout the mansion. Red emergency lights bathed the hallway. Security breach, Mrs. Chun explained, already moving. Protocol Sigma. Come. They hurried to a concealed panic room where the security chief, Reynolds, monitored feeds from around the property. Perimeter fence compromised at 3 points, he reported. Professional job. At least 4 intruders. Where's Mr. Blackwood? Arden asked. Lab locked down. Reynolds glanced at various screens. But they're heading there now. Arden's journalistic instincts warred with her cover identity. If these were corporate raiders after Blackwood's technology, this could connect to Julian's investigation. There's a service tunnel connecting this wing to the lab level, she said, recalling blueprints she'd studied before infiltrating. When Mrs. Chun looked surprised, Arden added, I reviewed the emergency protocols. Thoroughly. She's right, Reynolds confirmed. But the lab itself requires Blackwood's biometrics. Then we warn him they're coming. Arden was already moving toward the tunnel access. Inside the narrow passage, Mrs. Chun spoke softly. You're not what you appear to be, Ms. Winters. None of us are, Arden replied, focused on reaching Blackwood before the intruders. They emerged into a utility room 1 floor below the lab. Through the reinforced glass ceiling, they could see Blackwood working, oblivious to the danger. Mrs. Chun used an emergency override to establish communication. Sir, intruders on the property. For armed individuals approaching your position. Blackwood barely looked up. Activate Protocol Epsilon. Sir, they'll reach you before security can respond. Arden interjected. I'm in the middle of a critical procedure that cannot be interrupted, he replied, adjusting something in a containment chamber glowing with that same eerie blue light Arden had witnessed during his episode. An explosion rocked the west entrance. The security feed showed masked figures entering the building. 3 minutes until they reached the lab, Reynolds reported over the comm. Mr. Blackwood, Arden urged, whatever you're working on isn't worth your life. His eyes finally met hers through the glass. In this case, Ms. Winters, that's precisely what it's worth. Something in his expression made Arden's next actions inexplicable even to herself. She rushed to the utility room's breaker panel and killed power to the entire wing. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, but it was enough to trigger the lab's failsafe, a specialized lockdown that sealed Blackwood's work and activated a hidden elevator platform. Before Mrs. Chun could stop her, Arden jumped onto the descending platform with Blackwood. What the hell do you think you're doing? He demanded as they dropped into a bunker beneath the mansion. Saving your life? She snapped back. You can fire me tomorrow. The bunker was a simplified version of his lab, with basic living quarters attached. Multiple screens showed security feeds from the mansion. The intruders, finding their target gone, were systematically photographing his equipment before Reynolds and his team could intercept them. They're not stealing, Arden observed. They're documenting. Industrial espionage, Blackwood confirmed, watching the screens with surprising calm. Not their first attempt, though usually they're more subtle. Who are they working for? He glanced at her sharply. Curious, aren't you? Nearly getting killed tends to provoke questions. A hint of a smile touched his lips before vanishing. Fair enough. They're likely working for Helix Energy, my former partner's new company. Veronica Sinclair. Arden remembered the woman from the photograph. Surprise flickered across his face. You've done your homework. I like knowing who I'm working for. The security feed showed the intruders retreating as police sirens wailed in the distance. They got what they came for, Blackwood muttered, then turned his attention to a small device he'd brought from the lab, a containment unit for whatever had been emitting the blue light. What is that? Arden asked. That, Ms. Winters, is none of your concern. He secured the device in a reinforced cabinet. Though I suppose I owe you some explanation after your unorthodox intervention. He gestured for her to sit at a small conference table. My work involves experimental energy sources. Dangerous if mishandled. Valuable beyond measure if successfully developed. And that's why people are breaking in. To steal your research. To steal, to sabotage, to destroy, depends on their benefactor's goal. He studied her with those penetrating blue eyes. The question remains, who are you really? You're too observant for a simple assistant. Too quick thinking. Too willing to risk yourself. Maybe I just don't like seeing people get hurt, Arden replied, maintaining eye contact. A noble sentiment. He didn't look convinced. But I've learned that nobility is often the prettiest disguise for deception. The elevator hummed as Reynolds and Mrs. Chun descended to join them. The intruders escaped, Reynolds reported. Police are searching the area. Damage assessment? Blackwood asked. Minimal. They accessed only the outer lab. Core research areas remain sealed. Good. We'll remain here until morning. Blackwood turned to Arden. Ms. Winters, despite my suspicions about your true purpose here, your actions tonight were appreciated. It was hardly gratitude, but something in his tone had shifted, a microscopic crack in his armor. That night, as the others slept in the bunker's sparse quarters, Arden lay awake. The break-in supported her suspicion that Blackwood's research connected to Julian's death. But seeing Blackwood defend his work with such intensity raised uncomfortable questions. Was this the calculating villain she'd imagined? Or was something far more complex unfolding? On the ceiling above her cot, barely visible in the dim light, a mathematical formula had been sketched directly onto the concrete, a moment of inspiration preserved. Beside it, in smaller notation, the key to redemption. Arden touched the compact mirror hidden in her pocket, feeling Julian's photo inside. She'd come seeking justice for a mentor. Now she found herself in the fortress of her prime suspect, increasingly uncertain about who deserved her loyalty, the dead or the living. 2 weeks after the break-in, Arden found herself in uncharted territory. The security breach had altered Blackwood's routine, forcing him to accelerate his research. He now required her presence in the lab, something previously unthinkable. Hold this precisely at a 45-degree angle, Blackwood instructed, passing her a specialized sensor while he adjusted settings on a device humming with energy. The blue glow that had fascinated Arden emanated from a containment chamber in the center of the room. What exactly am I helping you measure? Arden asked, maintaining the sensor's position despite her arm's growing fatigue. Quantum field fluctuations, he replied without elaboration. When she raised an eyebrow, he sighed. The energy source I'm developing creates ripples in the quantum field. Too many ripples, too fast, boom. Reassuring. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Science rarely is. These moments had become more frequent. Brief exchanges where Thaddeus Blackwood seemed almost human rather than the cold, calculating figure of her investigation. It unsettled her more than she cared to admit. 3 degrees higher, he murmured, engrossed in readings on his tablet. Remarkable. The energy output has doubled with minimal field disruption. Arden seized the opening. Is this what Helix Energy is after? This new power source? Blackwood's expression hardened. You ask a lot of questions for someone who claimed to want this job for the paycheck. Intelligence isn't a liability in an assistant, she countered, lowering the sensor as he indicated. And when people start breaking in with guns, I think I've earned answers. He studied her for a long moment. What I'm developing could revolutionize clean energy production. No emissions, minimal resource requirements, virtually unlimited output. It would make fossil fuels obsolete overnight. Which would make you the most powerful man on the planet, Arden observed. Or the most hunted. The bitterness in his voice surprised her. He turned back to his work, conversation clearly over. Later that afternoon, Arden was organizing research notes when Blackwood suddenly clutched his chest, gasping. The now familiar blue glow pulsed beneath his skin, tracing his veins like luminescent rivers. She rushed to retrieve the injector from his desk. This episode seemed worse than the first she'd witnessed, his body convulsed, eyes rolling back. Thaddeus, she abandoned all professional pretense, pressing the injector to his neck while supporting his weight. Stay with me. For terrifying seconds, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the blue light receded. His breathing steadied, but he remained unconscious, head resting against her shoulder. Mrs. Chin appeared in the doorway, alarm evident on her usually impassive face. How long was the episode? Almost 2 minutes, Arden replied, helping her move Blackwood to the couch. The injection barely worked. They're getting worse. Mrs. Chun retrieved a medical kit, expertly checking his vitals. We need to call Dr. Patel. No doctors, Blackwood murmured, regaining consciousness. They can't help. Sir, with all due respect, Mrs. Chun began. It's not negotiable. He attempted to sit up, grimacing. Arden found her reporter's objectivity slipping. What's happening to you? These aren't normal seizures. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw a raw vulnerability there. No, they're not. Before he could continue, Mrs. Chun interjected. Sir, perhaps you should rest. She's already seen too much to remain in the dark, Helen. He addressed the housekeeper with unexpected familiarity. To Arden, he added, my condition is related to my research. A side effect. The blue light, Arden said. It's the same energy you're working with in the lab. He nodded weakly. Very observant, Ms. Winters. Mrs. Chun helped him to his private quarters, leaving Arden alone with her thoughts and the softly humming equipment. She used the opportunity to examine Blackwood's workstation, careful not to disturb anything. His tablet was locked, but paper notes lay scattered nearby. Complex equations she couldn't begin to comprehend, but phrases jumped out. Cellular degradation rate, containment field stability, and most disturbingly, estimated survival timeline, 16 months. Arden's phone vibrated. A text from her editor. Where's your story? Bored, getting impatient. She hadn't filed anything substantive in weeks, torn between her mission to expose Blackwood and her growing uncertainty about his guilt. She typed back, close to breakthrough. Need more time. The reply came instantly. Deadline, 1 week. Then we pull you. Arden slipped the phone away as Blackwood returned, moving slowly but insisting on resuming work. You should rest, she advised. Rest is a luxury I cannot afford. He gestured to the workstation. Besides, there's been a development. The latest test results show promise. For your energy source or your condition? His eyes narrowed. You've been snooping. Reading notes left in plain sight isn't snooping. Arden crossed her arms. You're dying, aren't you? That's why you're working yourself to exhaustion. A tense silence stretched between them before he finally sighed. Yes. Ironic, isn't it? Creating an energy source that could save the world while it slowly kills its creator. There's no treatment. The condition is unprecedented. It originated during the lab accident 10 years ago. Exposure to an experimental energy matrix. My cells are gradually converting to something else. He spoke with clinical detachment. Each episode accelerates the process. And your research? Dual purpose. Perfect the energy source, and perhaps find a way to reverse my condition. Arden processed this revelation. If true, it cast doubt on her theory of Blackwood as Julian's murderer. A dying man focused on saving himself seemed an unlikely corporate assassin. The lab's communication system chimed. Reynolds appeared on screen. Sir, the board members have arrived for their quarterly briefing. Blackwood grimaced. I'd forgotten. Prepare the conference room. You're in no condition for a meeting, Arden protested. Nevertheless, appearances must be maintained. He straightened his posture with visible effort. The board believes I've developed an eccentricity for privacy, not that I'm battling a terminal condition. Let me handle it, Arden suggested impulsively. I'll say you're engaged in critical testing. I can present the quarterly reports instead. Suspicion flashed across his face. And why would you do that? Because I'm beginning to doubt everything I believed about you, she thought. Aloud, she said, because it's my job. Something shifted in his eyes. Not quite trust, but consideration. Very well. The presentation is on my secure server. Password, Prometheus 2218. The reference wasn't lost on Arden, Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods, and was eternally punished for giving it to humanity. The board meeting went remarkably well. Years of investigative journalism had taught Arden how to command a room. She delivered Blackwood's findings confidently, fielded questions expertly, and maintained the illusion that Blackwood's absence was due to breakthrough research, not physical collapse. When she returned to the lab, she found him reviewing security footage of her presentation. Impressive, he acknowledged. You handled Thompson's aggressive questioning better than I usually do. He's compensating for insecurity, Arden observed. Classic bully tactics. Indeed. Blackwood studied her with new interest. You're not what you seem, Ms. Winters. Neither are you, Mr. Blackwood. The moment lingered, charged with unspoken questions. Then alarms blared throughout the compound. Not another break-in, Arden said. Blackwood checked his security panel. Worse, fire in the East Lab wing. They rushed to the monitoring station where Reynolds was coordinating response teams. Screens showed flames engulfing a secondary research area. It's spreading to the main power couplings, Reynolds reported. If it reaches the experimental energy cells, evacuate all personnel, Blackwood ordered. Activate containment protocols. The fire suppression system isn't responding, Reynolds said. Someone sabotaged it. This was deliberate. Blackwood's face hardened. Inside job. Only someone with access could bypass those systems. His gaze fell on Arden, suspicion evident. Before he could voice his thoughts, an explosion rocked the facility, knocking out several monitoring systems. Critical failure imminent in Storage Unit 5, a computerized voice announced. Detonation in 3 minutes. If that energy cache explodes, it'll take half the compound with it, Blackwood explained grimly. Can't you shut it down remotely? Arden asked. No. Manual override required. He was already moving toward the emergency exit. Get to the evacuation point. Where are you going? To prevent a catastrophe. He paused at the doorway. If I don't make it back, there's a file on my private server labeled contingency. Password is Julian1104. Arden froze. What did you say? No time to explain. Go. He disappeared down the corridor, leaving Arden stunned by the mention of Julian's name and birth month. It couldn't be coincidence. Instead of evacuating, she followed Blackwood at a distance, watching as he navigated smoke-filled corridors toward the heart of the fire. Near the compromised storage unit, he unlocked a maintenance panel and began manually overriding safety protocols. The countdown continued. Detonation in 60 seconds. Blackwood worked frantically, coughing as smoke filled the area. When the system announced 30 seconds, he nearly completed the override, but then collapsed in another seizure, the telltale blue glow pulsing beneath his skin. Without hesitation, Arden rushed forward, dragging him away from the panel. What needs to be done? Between convulsions, he gasped. Green switch. Then enter code 8429. Confirm with red, key turn. Arden completed the sequence with seconds to spare. The system announced, decontamination sequence initiated. Threat contained. Emergency sprinklers finally activated, dousing the remaining flames. Medical staff would arrive soon, but for now, they were alone in the smoke-hazy corridor. Blackwood's seizure subsided, leaving him weak but conscious. He looked at Arden with bewilderment. You could have escaped. Why risk your life? The question hung between them, forcing Arden to confront her conflicting loyalties. She'd come to expose this man, convinced of his guilt. Now she'd saved him, twice. I don't know, she answered honestly. He studied her with those penetrating blue eyes. I think you do, Eliza. Or should I say, Arden McKinley? The medical team insisted on examining Thaddeus despite his protests. Arden stood in the corner of the makeshift triage area, her cover blown, awaiting the inevitable confrontation. The revelation of her true identity hung between them like a storm cloud. When the doctors finally departed, Thaddeus dismissed the security team with a gesture. For several long moments, he simply observed her, his expression unreadable. Boston Chronicle, he finally said. Julian Hayes' protege. I should have recognized you sooner. How long have you known? Arden asked, seeing no point in denial. Suspected for days. Confirmed during the fire when I accessed your personnel file remotely. He didn't appear angry, merely contemplative. You believe I killed him. It wasn't a question. Julian was investigating Blackwood Industries before his death, Arden replied carefully. His brake lines were cut. The police called it an accident, but you knew better. Thaddeus attempted to stand, wincing at the effort. I didn't kill Hayes. In fact, I was trying to help him. You expect me to believe that? I expect nothing. His gaze was steady, but it happens to be true. Check the file I mentioned, Julian1104. His birth date, if I recall correctly. Arden's skepticism must have shown on her face because Thaddeus sighed. You came here seeking truth, Ms. McKinley. I'm offering it to you. Why would Julian contact you? He was investigating your company for corporate espionage and environmental violations. Initially, yes, but what he discovered was far more complex. Thaddeus gestured to a nearby tablet. See for yourself. Arden hesitated before entering the password. The file contained correspondence between Julian and Thaddeus, beginning 8 months before Julian's death. The early exchanges were confrontational, Julian accusing, Thaddeus defending, but gradually evolved into cautious collaboration. The final message from Julian sent a chill through her. V's people following me. Need to meet. Think I found proof of sabotage. Stay safe. J. V. Arden looked up. Veronica Sinclair. My former partner. Thaddeus moved to the window, gazing out at the smoke still rising from the damaged wing. Julian died 3 days after that message. I tried to warn him. Why would Veronica want Julian dead? The same reason she wants me dead. We both discovered her secret. He turned back to face Arden. The lab accident that killed my brother wasn't an accident at all. Before Thaddeus could elaborate, Reynolds entered with an update on the fire investigation. It was definitely sabotage, sir. We found evidence of a remote detonator. Reynolds glanced at Arden, then back to Thaddeus. Do you want her removed from the premises? That won't be necessary, Thaddeus replied. Ms. McKinley and I have reached an understanding. Reynolds looked skeptical but nodded. There's something else. We have a visitor insisting on seeing you. Veronica Sinclair. Thaddeus and Arden exchanged sharp glances. Convenient timing, Thaddeus remarked. Have her escorted to the South Conference Room. Ms. McKinley will accompany me. You want me there? Arden asked once Reynolds left. You're a journalist. Observe. Draw your own conclusions. His expression darkened. Just remember, she's far more dangerous than I ever was. Veronica Sinclair embodied corporate elegance, tailored suit, calculated smile, and eyes that evaluated everything as an asset or liability. Arden recognized her immediately from the gallery photograph, though the years had hardened her features. Thaddeus, darling. Veronica air-kissed near his cheek. When I heard about the fire, I had to check on you personally. How thoughtful, Thaddeus replied coolly. Especially since you said it. Veronica's laugh tinkled like broken glass. Always so dramatic. Is that why you've got a reporter shadowing you now? Her gaze shifted to Arden. Yes, I know exactly who you are, Ms. McKinley. Julian's little acolyte. Arden maintained her composure. You knew Julian Hayes? We had several enlightening conversations before his unfortunate accident. Veronica's smile never reached her eyes. Such a talented writer. So curious. The threat beneath her words was unmistakable. What do you want, Veronica? Thaddeus asked, his patience visibly thinning. The same thing I've wanted for years, darling. Partnership. She placed a sleek portfolio on the table. Helix Energy is prepared to acquire your research at a very generous valuation. Given today's unfortunate incident, you might consider it divine timing. You destroy my lab, endanger my staff, and then offer to buy me out? Thaddeus shook his head in disbelief. Your audacity remains unmatched. Business is business. Veronica shrugged elegantly. Besides, your condition isn't improving, is it? Wouldn't you rather secure your legacy now? Arden watched Thaddeus stiffen. How do you know about my condition? Please. Veronica waved dismissively. I've had you under surveillance for years. I know about the seizures, the blue light phenomenon, everything. Our researchers believe you have perhaps a year left. Tragic, really. Get out, Thaddeus said quietly. You're making a mistake, Veronica warned, gathering her portfolio. Next time, we won't target an empty lab wing. Is that a threat? A business forecast. She stood to leave, then paused beside Arden. A word of advice, Ms. McKinley. Julian didn't know when to stop digging. Don't make the same mistake. After she departed, silence settled over the room. Thaddeus looked exhausted, the confrontation having drained his limited reserves. She as much as admitted to killing Julian, Arden said, struggling to contain her anger. And sabotaging my lab 10 years ago, Thaddeus added grimly. The accident that killed my brother and left me like this. Why? What could possibly be worth murder? Control of the most revolutionary energy source in human history. Thaddeus leaned heavily on the table. My brother Marcus and I discovered it accidentally. A way to harvest quantum vacuum energy. Limitless clean power. We were idealists, planning to release it to the world. Veronica was our business partner, responsible for commercialization. Let me guess, she had other ideas. She wanted to weaponize it first, then control its release to maximize profit. His expression darkened with memory. When we refused, sabotage became her solution. The containment field collapsed during a demonstration. Marcus died instantly. I survived, but the exposure altered me at a cellular level. Rain began to patter against the windows, a summer storm rolling in from the Atlantic. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the fatigue etched into Thaddeus's features. I spent years rebuilding my research, learning to manage my condition, he continued. When Julian contacted me, I initially thought it was just another hit piece. But he'd found financial records linking Veronica to known saboteurs. Why didn't you go to the authorities? With what proof? The explosion destroyed most of the evidence. Veronica had powerful allies. In my condition, he gestured vaguely at himself. I'd become a medical impossibility, more likely to end up a government test subject than receive justice. Another flash of lightning, closer now. The storm intensified, rain lashing the windows. Julian promised to help expose her, Thaddeus said quietly. And it got him killed. Arden felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Everything she believed about Thaddeus Blackwood had been wrong. The villain of her narrative was becoming something else entirely, a victim seeking redemption. I need some air, she said, turning toward the door. The storm, Thaddeus began. I'll stay on the covered terrace. Outside, the rain created a curtain around the stone terrace. Arden leaned against a pillar, watching lightning dance across the turbulent sea. Her phone vibrated, another message from her editor. Time's up. Story or walking papers. How could she possibly file the story she'd come for? The truth she'd discovered was nothing like she'd expected. Julian hadn't been killed by the reclusive billionaire, but while trying to help him. And now she found herself in the same position, drawn into Blackwood's orbit, entangled in his quest for justice. She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear Thaddeus approach until he spoke. Storms were my brother's favorite. His voice startled her. He said they reminded him that nature still dwarfed human power, no matter our technological achievements. Arden studied him in the dim light. You miss him. Every day. Thaddeus joined her at the railing. He was the people person, the visionary. I was just the scientist who made his dreams possible. And now you're trying to finish what you started together. Trying and failing. The admission seemed to cost him. Each breakthrough accelerates my condition. I'm running out of time. A particularly violent lightning strike illuminated the entire bay. In that flash, Arden saw raw vulnerability in Thaddeus's eyes, not the calculating coldness she'd first perceived, but profound grief and determination. I misjudged you, she said softly. You had good reason. He turned to face her. What happens now, Ms. McKinley? Do you still plan to expose the reclusive monster of Blackwood Estate? The question hung between them, weighted with consequence. Arden knew her answer would irrevocably alter her relationship with both Thaddeus and Julian's memory. I came for Julian's story, she said finally. But I don't think I've found it yet. And what story have you found? I'm not sure, but I'd like to keep looking. She met his gaze directly. With your permission. Something shifted in his expression, a fractional softening. You believe me, then? I believe there's more to learn. Arden chose her words carefully. About Veronica, about your research, about Julian's investigation. And I want to help. Thunder rumbled overhead as they regarded each other, the downpour creating a private world on the stone terrace. Neither spoke for several moments, the only sound the rhythmic drumming of rain. You should know, Thaddeus finally said, that helping me could put you in Veronica's crosshairs. I've been there since Julian died. Arden's resolve hardened. At least now I'm facing the right direction. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. Then perhaps we can help each other, Ms. McKinley. Arden, she corrected. If we're going to work together, you should use my real name. Arden. He tested the name, then extended his hand. And I'm Thaddeus. As their hands met, another flash of lightning illuminated them. Two adversaries transformed into reluctant allies by shared loss and unexpected truth. Inside the mansion, unbeknownst to either of them, Mrs. Chun observed their handshake through the security feed. She picked up a secure phone and dialed a number few knew existed. Progress at last, she reported to the anonymous recipient. They found common ground. The voice on the other end asked a question. No, she replied. Neither suspects. Proceeding as planned. She ended the call and deleted the record of its existence, her expression betraying nothing of her true purpose at Blackwood Estate. 3 days after their agreement, Arden found herself with unprecedented access to Blackwood's files. She'd established a makeshift workstation in his lab, combing through Julian's correspondence and Blackwood Industries records, searching for concrete evidence against Veronica. Found anything? Thaddeus asked, looking up from his workbench where components of his quantum energy device lay disassembled. Maybe. Arden gestured to her screen. Julian tracked financial transfers from Helix subsidiaries to shell companies known for corporate espionage. The timing aligns perfectly with your lab incidents. Circumstantial at best, Thaddeus sighed. Veronica's too careful to leave obvious trails. Their new partnership remained cautious, professional respect gradually replacing suspicion, but trust still a fragile commodity between them. The lab door slid open as Reynolds entered. "Sir, there's something you should see." He plugged a drive into Arden's terminal. Security footage appeared, showing Mrs. Chun accessing Thaddeus's private server at 3 a.m. "When was this?" Thaddeus demanded. "Last night. She copied files to an external drive, then replaced it in your office." Arden felt a chill. "She's been here how long?" 15 years, Thaddeus replied, expression darkening. "Since before the accident." "Where is she now?" Arden asked. "Supply run to Boston," Reynolds answered. "Due back in 2 hours." "Check her quarters," Thaddeus ordered, "and lock down all systems." Arden and Thaddeus searched Mrs. Chin's apartment themselves. It yielded nothing until Arden spotted a slight discoloration on the bedroom wall. There. She pressed the section, revealing a hidden compartment containing a satellite phone and encrypted hard drive. "Helen," Thaddeus whispered, betrayal evident in his voice. All this time, back in the lab, they attempted to crack the drive's encryption. Frustration mounted until Arden suggested using Mrs. Chin's personal items for password attempts. "Try her cat's name plus her birth date," she suggested. The drive unlocked, revealing years of surveillance on Thaddeus, medical data, research updates, security protocols, all transmitted to an anonymous recipient. "She's been spying on me for a decade," Thaddeus said, voice hollow. "Everything I've done, every breakthrough." The fire wasn't Veronica's doing, Arden realized. It was an inside job. Mrs. Chun. A system alert chimed. Mrs. Chun had returned early and accessed the East Wing. "She knows we found her out," Thaddeus said grimly. Reynolds's voice came over the intercom. "Sir, we have another problem. Someone's uploading your research files to an external server. Lock down all systems," Thaddeus commanded, rushing to his terminal. "Too late," Arden said, watching the progress bar complete. They got everything. Thaddeus's personal laptop chimed with an incoming message from Arden's email account. The screen displayed photos of her and Thaddeus in the lab, his condition clearly visible during an episode, alongside classified research documents. The message read, "Ready to publish. Boston Chronicle exclusive, Blackwood's monstrous experiments." Thaddeus turned to her slowly, betrayal etched across his features. "Was this your plan all along?" "No." Arden stared at the screen in horror. "I didn't send this. You have to believe me. Believe the reporter who infiltrated my home under false pretenses?" His voice cut like ice. "Who gained my trust while gathering evidence?" "This isn't me," she insisted, desperately accessing her account settings. "Look, the login location is Boston. I'm here with you." Before Thaddeus could respond, the power cut throughout the facility. Emergency lights activated as Reynolds reported over the backup comm system. "Breach at the north entrance. Armed intruders." "Veronica," Thaddeus muttered. "Perfect timing." "This was coordinated," Arden said. "Frame me, divide us, then attack while we're vulnerable." Thaddeus hesitated, years of isolation having taught him to trust no one. But something in Arden's desperate sincerity reached him. "If you're lying," he said quietly, "you're extraordinarily convincing." Security cameras showed mercenaries spreading through the compound. Mrs. Chun was nowhere to be seen. "We need to secure the quantum converter," Thaddeus said, retrieving the device from its protective case. "It's what they're really after." "What about Reynolds and the security team?" "Emergency protocol. They'll evacuate through the underground tunnels." A violent explosion shook the building. "They're getting closer," Arden warned. Thaddeus handed her a small hard drive. "This contains everything. My research, evidence against Veronica, Julian's investigation. If anything happens to me." "Nothing's happening to either of us," Arden interrupted, pocketing the drive. "What's the escape plan?" "This way." They moved swiftly through maintenance corridors toward the garage level. Thaddeus carried the quantum converter in a specialized case, his breathing increasingly labored from exertion. "You're pushing too hard," Arden warned. noting the faint blue glow beginning beneath his skin. No choice, he gasped. They had almost reached the garage when gunfire erupted ahead. 3 mercenaries blocked their path. Back, Thaddeus hissed, pulling Arden into a side room. There's no other exit, she whispered, surveying the storage space. There's always another way. Thaddeus removed a ceiling panel, revealing a narrow shaft. Maintenance access. It leads to the cliff path. Arden climbed up first, then helped pull Thaddeus through as footsteps approached. They replaced the panel seconds before the door burst open below. Crawling through dusty passages, they emerged onto a narrow path carved into the seaside cliff behind the mansion. Rain had made the footing treacherous. My car's parked half a mile down the service road, Arden said. If we can reach it. A bullet struck rock inches from her head. Mrs. Chun stood 30 feet away, pistol aimed steadily. Helen, Thaddeus said, genuine pain in his voice. Why? Business, sir. Nothing personal. Her accent had vanished completely. Miss Sinclair has invested too much to let you succeed now. You've worked for her all along, Arden realized. Someone had to ensure you never completed your research, Mrs. Chun replied calmly. Now, the converter, please. And then what? Thaddeus asked. You shoot us anyway? That depends on how cooperative you are. Thunder crashed overhead. In that moment of distraction, Arden lunged forward, tackling Mrs. Chun. The gun discharged, the bullet grazing Arden's arm. They grappled at the cliff's edge, rain making every movement treacherous. Thaddeus staggered toward them, his condition flaring visibly now, blue light pulsing beneath his skin. As he reached for Mrs. Chun, a violent seizure struck. He collapsed, the converter case slipping from his grip and tumbling toward the edge. Arden broke free from Mrs. Chun, diving for the case. She caught it inches from the precipice, but found herself dangerously overbalanced. Mrs. Chun recovered her weapon, aiming at Thaddeus's convulsing form. I'm sorry it ended this way. So am I, came a voice behind her. Reynolds emerged from the shadows, his own weapon raised. Drop it, Helen. The betrayal in his former colleague's eyes froze Mrs. Chun momentarily, long enough for Arden to regain her footing and rush to Thaddeus's side. The blue glow had intensified dangerously. He needs his medication, Arden shouted over the storm. It's in his pocket. Reynolds kept his gun trained on Mrs. Chun while Arden administered the injection. Slowly, the seizure subsided. We need to move, Reynolds urged. More of Sinclair's people are coming. As they helped Thaddeus to his feet, Mrs. Chun made her decision. She fired at Reynolds, the bullet striking his shoulder. In the chaos, she disappeared down the cliff path into the storm. Go after her, Reynolds urged through gritted teeth. No time, Thaddeus gasped. We need to get somewhere safe. Together, they half-carried Thaddeus to Arden's car, the quantum converter secure, but their alliance shaken to its core. Rain hammered against the windshield as Arden navigated treacherous mountain roads. Thaddeus slumped in the passenger seat, his complexion ashen aside from the faint blue glow pulsing beneath his skin. Reynolds followed in a separate vehicle, keeping watch for pursuit. Where are we going? Thaddeus asked weakly. Somewhere Veronica won't look, Arden replied, turning onto an unmarked forest road. My grandfather's cabin in the Berkshires. No one's used it in years. The small cabin materialized through the downpour, weathered timber walls beneath towering pines. Inside was rustic but functional. A stone fireplace, basic furniture, and crucially, no digital footprint. Reynolds secured the perimeter while Arden helped Thaddeus to the couch. His condition had stabilized, but exhaustion had claimed him. He clutched the converter case even in semi-consciousness. Will he be all right? Reynolds asked, returning from his patrol. I don't know, Arden admitted. The seizures are getting worse. I've got contacts who can bring medical supplies, Reynolds offered. Ex-military, trustworthy. Do it, she nodded. But carefully. After Reynolds departed, Arden built a fire and tended to Thaddeus. The rain eased into gentle pattering against the roof, creating an incongruously peaceful backdrop to their crisis. Hours passed before Thaddeus fully regained consciousness. He surveyed the cabin with confusion. We're safe, Arden assured him. For now. His eyes found hers, still harboring suspicion. The email from your account. Wasn't me. She handed him her laptop. Look at the IP address. It originated from Boston while we were both at the estate. They framed me to divide us. Thaddeus examined the evidence, his expression gradually softening. A classic misdirection. Exactly what Veronica would do. Arden sat beside him. "I'm on your side, Thaddeus." Something in her sincerity finally reached him. He nodded slowly. "I believe you." The admission shifted something between them, tentative trust crystallizing into something stronger. "What's in the case?" Arden asked, gesturing to the converter he still protected. Thaddeus hesitated before unlocking it. Inside lay a device roughly the size of a softball, pulsing with the same ethereal blue energy that plagued his body. "The quantum vacuum converter," he explained. "The culmination of my life's work. It creates clean energy by harvesting quantum fluctuations in empty space." "Unlimited power from nothing," Arden marveled. "Not nothing. The quantum vacuum contains tremendous energy. This simply makes it accessible." His expression darkened. "It's also killing me." "How?" "The prototype exploded during that sabotage demonstration 10 years ago. Marcus died instantly. I survived, but the exposure altered my cellular structure. My cells are gradually converting to pure energy." Arden struggled to comprehend. "That's what causes the seizures? Your body is turning into energy." "Essentially, yes. Each episode accelerates the process." He met her gaze directly. "I have months at best." The revelation hit Arden with unexpected force. She'd come seeking Julian's killer and found instead a dying man racing against time to complete work that could transform humanity. "There's no treatment." "I've tried everything." Bitterness edged his voice. "The only potential solution would be to reverse the quantum conversion process, but that technology doesn't exist yet." Lightning illuminated the cabin briefly. In that flash, Arden saw not the billionaire recluse, but simply a man facing his mortality, carrying a burden that would crush most. "Tell me about Julian," she said quietly. "How did he find you?" "He tracked financial irregularities at Helix back to the original accident." "Smart man." Respect colored Thaddeus's voice. "Initially, he thought I was responsible for everything. The sabotage, the cover-up. He came looking for a villain and found." He gestured to himself. "This." What changed his mind? "Evidence. I showed him what I'm showing you." Thaddeus retrieved a small drive from his pocket. Security footage from the day of the explosion, recovered from backup servers. It shows Veronica tampering with the containment protocols. She wanted the technology to fail publicly so she could acquire it privately. Arden connected her laptop. The grainy footage clearly showed Veronica accessing the lab's control systems hours before the demonstration. Julian was going to expose everything. Thaddeus continued. Veronica's sabotage, the cover-up, my condition, the true potential of the technology. 3 days before publication, his brakes failed. "She had him killed," Arden whispered, "and made it look like an accident, just like she did with my brother." His fist clenched. "I warned him she was dangerous. I didn't do enough." The guilt in his voice struck Arden deeply. "It wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I chose her as a partner. I trusted her. Everyone who's tried to help me has suffered for it." He looked at Arden with sudden alarm. "Including you now." Before she could respond, a creak from the porch sent them both into high alert. Thaddeus extinguished the lamp while Arden reached for the fireplace poker. The door opened slowly. Reynolds entered, drenched from the renewed downpour, carrying medical supplies. "All clear," he reported. No signs of pursuit. As the night deepened, they established watches. During her shift, Arden found Thaddeus's notebook open on the table, filled with equations and a handwritten letter addressed to her. "If you're reading this, I've likely succumbed to my condition," it began. "The converter must reach the right hands. Not corporations, not governments. People who will use it for humanity's benefit. Julian believed in you. So do I." The simple declaration of faith from a man who had every reason to distrust her resonated deeply. Arden watched him sleep fitfully on the couch, the faint blue glow visible even through his clothes. Tomorrow they would plan their next move against Veronica. Tonight, in this mountain refuge, Arden confronted an uncomfortable truth. Somewhere between investigating Thaddeus Blackwood and understanding him, she had begun to care for him in ways that complicated everything. Outside, the storm gradually subsided, stars emerging between parting clouds. Inside, something equally transformative was taking place. 2 damaged people finding unexpected connection and shared purpose and growing trust. Dawn broke over the Berkshires. pale light filtering through pine trees still dripping from the night storm. Arden sat at the cabin's small kitchen table, piecing together evidence from Julian's files and Thaddeus's research. Reynolds had departed at first light to retrieve supplies and establish secure communications. Any progress? Thaddeus asked, emerging from the bedroom where he'd finally gotten a few hours of proper rest. Maybe. Arden gestured to her notes. Julian was tracking shell companies linked to Helix. 3 weeks before his death, he identified a pattern of specialized equipment purchases, components that could only be used for quantum field manipulation. Veronica is trying to replicate my technology, Thaddeus concluded, pouring coffee from the ancient percolator. Without success, apparently. That's why she's escalating. She needs your converter. Thaddeus examined the quantum device, its blue glow pulsing in sync with the energy beneath his skin. The irony is, she doesn't even understand what she's after. This isn't just an energy source. It's a doorway. A doorway to what? He hesitated. I'm not entirely sure. But the quantum field interactions suggest possibilities beyond power generation, restructuring matter, perhaps even affecting temporal mechanics. Time manipulation? Arden couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. Theoretical, but possible. His expression grew troubled. In Veronica's hands, even the power generation alone would be catastrophic. She'd weaponize it first, then control its commercial applications to maintain dependencies. Arden considered this. We need to expose her before she gets the technology or silences us both. How? She's erased most evidence of her involvement in the original sabotage. My word against hers would be meaningless. I'm a recluse with a mysterious condition that makes me appear unstable. What about Julian's evidence? Incomplete. He died before connecting all the dots. Arden paced the small cabin. Then we complete his work. We gather proof of everything. The sabotage, Julian's murder, the attacks on your facility. And how do we do that without getting killed in the process? By giving Veronica what she wants, partway. A strategy formed in Arden's mind. We offer a meeting to negotiate terms for the converter technology. She'll be suspicious but too tempted to refuse. And then, we record her. Get her to admit to the sabotage, to Julian's murder. With your testimony and Julian's evidence as foundation, a confession would be irrefutable. Thaddeus considered the plan, his scientific mind assessing variables and risks. She'll have security, countermeasures against recording, which is why we need leverage she can't ignore. Arden leaned forward. Your condition, what if you told her it's reversible? That you've discovered how to control the quantum energy conversion in living tissue? His eyes widened with understanding. She'd want that technology even more than the converter. The military applications alone. Exactly. Dangle that possibility, and she'll meet with us personally. No intermediaries. The strategy took shape throughout the morning. By afternoon, when Reynolds returned, they had constructed a plan that balanced audacity with caution. It's risky, Reynolds warned after hearing their approach. Veronica Sinclair doesn't make amateur mistakes. No, Thaddeus agreed. But she has one critical weakness, ambition that overrides caution. If she believes she can acquire both technologies, she'll come herself. Reynolds appeared unconvinced but committed to helping. He provided encrypted phones and began arranging secure transportation. That evening, Thaddeus suffered another seizure, the worst Arden had witnessed. The blue energy surged visibly beneath his skin, his body arching in agony. The quantum converter in its case began resonating in response, its glow intensifying to match Thaddeus's condition. When the episode finally subsided, he remained weakened, his breath coming in labored gasps. You can't wait much longer, Arden said quietly, wiping perspiration from his forehead. No, he agreed, voice barely audible. The cellular degradation is accelerating. Then we move tomorrow. Reynolds has a secure location arranged for the meeting. Thaddeus caught her hand as she adjusted his blanket. Why are you doing this, Arden? You could walk away. Take Julian's evidence to the authorities, write your story. Would that bring justice for Julian? Or for your brother? She shook her head. Besides, I'm already involved. Veronica knows who I am. There's more to it than that. His penetrating gaze challenged her. Arden hesitated, confronting emotions she'd been avoiding. I came looking for a villain and found something else entirely. Someone fighting for the right reasons, despite everything he's lost. Her voice softened. How could I walk away from that? Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability replacing the guarded calculation she'd grown accustomed to. For a moment, the brilliant, isolated scientist gave way to the man beneath. "Thank you," he said simply. Their shared gaze lingered until Reynolds interrupted with dinner. The evening passed with final preparations, a strange intimacy developing in their unlikely alliance. When Reynolds stepped outside to secure the perimeter, Thaddeus showed Arden how to operate the quantum converter if anything happened to him. "The calibration is precise," he explained, guiding her hands over the device. "Too much power, and it becomes unstable." Their fingers brushed, sending an unexpected current between them that had nothing to do with quantum energy. Arden found herself hyper-aware of his proximity, of the subtle scent of his skin beneath the medicinal compounds that managed his condition. "Thaddeus," she began, uncertain what she intended to say. "I know," he replied softly. "Terrible timing, isn't it?" The acknowledgement of their growing connection hung in the air between them. Unwise, unexpected, and undeniable. "Let's get through tomorrow," she suggested. "Then we can figure out whatever this is." He nodded, though both recognized the unspoken reality. For Thaddeus, there might not be many tomorrows left. That night, as Arden took the first watch, she received an encrypted message on her laptop from her editor at the Boston Chronicle. "Veronica Sinclair just purchased controlling interest in our parent company. Board demanding your immediate return with the Blackwood story." "What's happening, McKinley?" Veronica was closing in, eliminating options. Tomorrow's confrontation had just become their only chance. Blackwood Industries' headquarters rose against the Boston skyline as Arden and Thaddeus approached through the underground parking structure. Reynolds monitored from a surveillance van nearby. "Last chance to back out," Thaddeus said, adjusting the case containing the quantum converter. "Not happening," Arden replied, checking her hidden recording devices. Veronica awaited them in the executive boardroom with 2 security guards. "Thaddeus, darling." "Ms. McKinley." "Still playing assistant." "Partner," Arden corrected. The negotiation began smoothly, Thaddeus offering both technologies in exchange for immunity and compensation. Veronica's hunger for the technology was palpable as Thaddeus revealed the pulsing blue device. "We know you sabotaged the original demonstration," Thaddeus stated, "and had Julian Hayes killed when he discovered it." Veronica's eyes hardened. Suppose there was an equipment malfunction, and suppose a reporter encountered an unfortunate accident. "What are you seeking?" "Justice," Arden replied, "starting with the truth." "Truth is a luxury," Veronica laughed coldly. Marcus was brilliant but sentimental. He would have given away technology worth trillions. "And Julian?" Arden pressed. Mr. Hayes became inconvenient. His brake lines were remarkably vulnerable to tampering. Veronica pressed a button, summoning armed security. "This room has signal jammers. Nothing gets transmitted without my permission." "This was your plan all along," Arden realized. "Lure us in, trap us, take everything." Suddenly Thaddeus collapsed, a massive seizure overtaking him. But unlike previous episodes, this one appeared deliberate. He convulsed toward the converter, his hands closing around it. A blinding blue energy field erupted, expanding outward. Electronics failed as security personnel dropped, clutching their heads. "Run," Thaddeus gasped to Arden. "I can't control it much longer." "Not without you," she insisted, helping him up. Veronica lunged toward them. "You planned this." "Quantum entanglement," Thaddeus managed. "The converter responds to my condition." Reynolds met them at the emergency stairwell as another energy pulse struck Veronica, sending her to the floor. In the parking garage, Thaddeus collapsed completely, the converter clutched against his chest. "It's killing him," Arden realized. "We need to separate them." "No," Thaddeus gasped. "They're linked now. Stabilize the reaction. The formula, in my notebook." Arden administered the stabilizing compounds with trembling hands. For several terrifying moments, nothing happened. Then gradually, the chaotic energy began harmonizing into a rhythmic glow. "It's working," Arden whispered. Thaddeus managed a weak smile before consciousness fled. 6 months later, they stood together on the cliffside terrace of the rebuilt Blackwood estate. The blue energy remained within Thaddeus, but controlled now, integrated rather than consuming. "Veronica's trial is scheduled for spring," he reported. "Between our recordings and Julian's evidence, conviction seems certain." Arden's series exposing the crimes had vindicated Julian's work and brought justice to Marcus's memory. Thaddeus slipped his arm around her waist, his touch now familiar. The quantum energy within him hummed pleasantly against her skin, a phenomenon they no longer feared. Still not sure how to explain to my mother that I fell in love with the man I was investigating for murder, she mused. Tell her the truth, he suggested. That you found a different story than the one you were looking for. A better one, Arden agreed. As they embraced, the quantum converter pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat. The accident that nearly killed him had become his salvation, his curse transformed into extraordinary possibility. What began as a quest for justice had evolved into a partnership forging new scientific frontiers, and, most unexpectedly, a love powerful enough to transcend the quantum boundaries between life and death itself.